Thank you all for coming. I'm not sure who's doing the microphone. I saw Ron with a microphone. I saw Boyd with a microphone. So as always, we'd like to do a walk around the room so everybody gets the opportunity to introduce themselves with their name and their call sign for two reasons. So one of them is so we can get to know each other, and the other one is so we can copy down who was actually there in attendance for our records. So whoever is doing that and whoever is manning the camera, I will turn it over to you capable people and we'll do the intros.
Hey, Ben A4VY.
Oh, and from Butler.
James, I'm a guest of Randy. I've been invited by him.
He's a ham wannabe. I'm Randy, KFRO, Hillsboro.
Dan, KR4UB.
Bob, W4 of K.
Lee, KQ4ZZD.
Dave, K4DJW, Rougemont.
Chip, KF4WBK, the cookie guy.
Boyd, KO4GJO, Hillsboro.
Dave, W4SAR, Efland.
Karen, KD4YJZ, Efland.
Brad, WZ4BSS, Hillsboro.
Brad, KN4QBZ.
This is Ron. That's the top of my head. KO4RON, Pittsburgh.
Oh, I forgot I was here. Wilson, W4BOH, Hillsboro.
You want me to do the folks on Zoom?
Yes, please.
All right. People on Zoom, if I miss anybody, please sing out. If I misstate your call sign, please sing out. We have Debbie, who is not yet licensed, but is taking the test later in the month, so good luck to her. Doug, N3LTV, Bruce, N1LN, Ken, KO4DHJ, Jose, KD4JWF, Charles, KQ4TNF, Mark, KR3AM, Tim, KC1TWR, JR, N4JQR, Kevin, KW4EE, Eric, KQ4RRN, and me, Laurie, N1YXU.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a big group tonight, and I really appreciate, if I was up north right now, I'd say I'd really appreciate everybody coming out in this horrible snowstorm with the wind and the blowing snow to get to the meeting. Fortunately, I don't have to say that, and Lori and I no longer have to live in that, seeing as how we've been out of that area for a little over 20 years now. But my relatives up there, my brother and our kids are in the middle of a real mess. So Lori, if you could bring up the first slide and then get right into the meeting. Okay, let's move right on to the agenda. As you can see from the agenda, we've got quite a few topics tonight. We've done the check-ins. I'll go through some opening comments. Last month, if you were in attendance or if you had the opportunity to look at the YouTube presentation that we posted earlier in the actually in the end of January, you can see what the show and request was. Tonight we're going to have some updates from some of those people, three of them actually, that brought their show and requests to the meeting, and they can provide an update, and if they choose they can also get the individual that they are working with to jump in and provide some updates too. So that could be an interactive session just to show how we're moving forward. It's my desire there, and I think the board of directors shares this desire, based on how encouraging everybody was when this was brought up by Ron. This might be something that we would like to get into on a regular basis. Probably not a full-blown meeting, but if some member has said, hey, I got this project, I really could use some help, and maybe it'll be a regular 10-minute or so agenda slice each meeting, and they can present what they're looking for and get somebody to sign up and help them. So this is pretty much a test drive, and hopefully those that put in the requests are going to be pleased with the outcome. And then we're going to go over the 2025 membership meeting programs. Boyd is going to do that. He has taken on the role of trying to coordinate the programs and what's going on. By no means is he going to be presenting them all, but he hopefully will be getting feedback from people and requests and volunteers that want to present them. So he'll give you an update on that. Ron, as the new treasurer, is going to give us a treasurer report. It's the beginning of the year, so what better time to do it than let everybody know where we are financially. We're going to talk a little bit about some upcoming training. We really haven't done training for a long time, and excuse me, Randy is going to present that. And we talked about that a little bit on email and some on Saturday at the Saturday Net. If you were there, you had a little bit of a view into what we might be doing. And I'm going to talk about the OCRA equipment inventory. Again, it's the beginning of the year. I want to make sure that as a club, we take good care of and know where all of the equipment we have is, who it's signed out to or who is using it, etc. For example, if you can hear me right now, you're hearing me on a piece of OCRA equipment in two ways. The laptop I'm using right now is one of the laptops that we have available for field day if need be. All of the audio video stuff is OCRA equipment, probably with the exception of all of the cables and the speaker. I think Wilson donated that, but the camera, I donated the camera and the tripod, and so there's a lot of stuff that you may not think is OCRA equipment, but we want to make sure we know what that is. So I'll show you where we are there, and then closing comments. So it's a full agenda. We will be willing to take questions and answers as we go through. So here's my opening comments, other than what I just said. February 23rd, 1 week from this coming Sunday, is the annual North Carolina QSO party. At the last meeting, Marty, W4MY, actually came to our membership meeting to thank everybody for participating and to kind of give you a brief input, if you will, of what's going to be coming. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to restate this. Wilson suggested I put this on the schedule, on the agenda tonight, and I thank him very much for that. Just so everybody has the opportunity to participate in the North Carolina QSO party. This is a very brief kind of review of it. It's Sunday, February 23rd from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sideband, CW, and digital. There has not been a lot of digital. This year may change, but it's mostly sideband and CW. Bonus stations has changed this year. If you go out to that website, the URL that I've got on this page, ncqsoparty.org, and you look up rules and bonus stations this year are registered club call signs. There's about 12 of them that registered. And every time you work if you work that particular club call, you'll get 50 extra points that goes against your score. I don't believe it's once per band or once per mode. I think it's once, but I did not read the instructions and the rules yet. And one thing I'd like to say, and this is for Mr. Snyder, since he's doing field day again this year, and we really want to see if we can get our score a little higher. This is excellent practice for being able to practice your running skills, where you would stay on a frequency and call CQ, because this is the North Carolina QSO party. People want to talk to people in North Carolina. So they're going to be calling you from all around the states and all around the world. There's quite a few DX hams that participate actively in stateside QSO parties. So there'll be a lot of that. So excellent practice for field day. You can also practice with your software if you run N2 or N3JFP or N1MM, how to configure the software for the North Carolina QSO party. So a week from this coming Sunday gives you lots of time to get things set up, try out your station, try out your software, and jump in. Lori and I are going to be participating again this year. That little picture down at the bottom of the screen is actually something that Marty and the QSO Party Coordinating Committee awarded us with last year. Lori and I came in first place for multi-operator North Carolina mixed high power. A lot of words, but that's, Lori and me, sideband NCW, and we ran high power. So we came in first place, and we used my club call, or our club call, NC4KW, but I was too late to register. I missed the deadline. So we will not be a bonus station, but we'll see if we can win another plaque. So that should be a fun time. Hope a lot of you had the opportunity to do that. Okay, next slide, please. All right, getting into the show and request. I know Eric is here tonight. Sherry said she may or may not attend. If she's not here, I will provide the update for her. And I heard that Lee is there. So I've been working with Eric, and I've been also working with Sherry, and I know Boyd has been working with Lee. So let's move to the next slide. And Eric, if you wouldn't mind, if you could grab the microphone and maybe get up in front of the room so Lori can spotlight you, and then we can go through the status of where you are with your request. There he is.
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, you're on Zoom. Okay, well then don't get in front of the room. We'll wait till you drive there.
I'd like to try, but yeah, I'm about 40 miles away. So
my apologies. Go for it, sir.
no worries. No worries. Thank you so much, Bruce. And yes, after last month, I was in the initial stages of trying to get equipment to operate after getting the general license back in December, and made a presentation. Well, basically, I didn't even know where to start. There's a lot of options out there, and what to do, and what to pursue, and how to pursue it, and that sort of thing. And so I've made a lot of progress. There were a lot of offers from other club members that were willing to help and offer advice, and I did get a lot of advice, and I've learned a lot, and but it was for someone new, I will say it was perhaps a little overwhelming, and raised more questions than answers, perhaps. But I really appreciate all the information. It certainly was a knowledge dump, and I got all that. And eventually, what was that, last Thursday? Bruce kindly invited me over to his house for a tour of the property, and we spent about 2 hours going over everything. And of course, it was quite enlightening, and obviously he's got a very impressive setup there. So I'm still trying to decide which rig to buy. I think I'm a little closer, and some of the advice that I've gotten, including from Bruce, is to don't buy a simple VHF, UHF rig, because you may outgrow it in 6 months, and then all of a sudden you've got an extra machine and don't know what to do with it, and you want to spend another $1,500 on something else, perhaps. So I think that's pretty good advice, and probably in the next month I'll decide which one to buy. And then as far as antenna goes, I think I'm going to start easy on that, because we've got an HOA, and I think I'm just going to start with something that's very close to the house and not visible as much as possible to the HOA, if you will. And so we're working on that. We've got a deck out and back, and I think I can mount something on the deck or close by. So I'm still going through that thought process. And of course, what goes along with that is selecting, whatever power supply you need, how you're going to do that. And Bruce talked quite a bit about coax, type and length, and make sure everything works together. I will say as far as the antenna setup, I've thought about it quite a bit, and I definitely am gonna need some help with that. I'm not a do-it-yourselfer, as probably most of you guys are, and I've never been a do-it-myselfer my whole life. So I think I'm gonna need to actually probably even hire somebody to set all this up, or at least make sure I get it set up right. Because even though you learn all this stuff taking the test and so forth, but actually doing it is another story. And so I'm not bashful for asking for help on the setup. And so that's probably in the next month or two. I hope to make a decision on the rig in the next couple weeks, and then go from there with the antenna. And we've got on a back deck. I have seen a picture in one of the QST magazines where they've got vertical antennas mounted to decks. So I don't know much about that. I've got to go find the picture that I saw. It was in the last 6 months or so, and that's something of interest to me. And because I can set up outside and connect with the antenna that way. So I'm gonna start simple in that regard, but the main thing that Bruce impressed upon me was the selection of the rig. Don't go very cheap, because you'll outgrow it in 6 months. So I hope to make some more progress in the next month or so, but it's been a very very busy month in terms of a knowledge dump, and and I'm still kind of digesting it all. What do you think, Bruce? Is that pretty much what you gathered from speaking with me?
Yeah, Eric, absolutely. First of all, thank you very much for coming forward with your request and then coming over here and putting up with me for a couple hours. Let me just say a little more detail about the rig. So one of Eric's requests is he wants to have a rig that's HF, VHF, UHF, and multi-mode. So even though he may not be putting up a huge HF antenna now, if he goes with just a UHF, VHF radio, then he's going to end up with 2 radios and 2 power supplies, and so the 991 is a really nice radio, maybe a couple levels up from the starter. It's kind of like the 7300 if it was an ICOM. So it's a nice radio for all modes, and you're in the $1,300–1,400 range. You're not in the $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 range. So it's a nice rig. So Eric, I applaud your suggestions. When it gets time, to order, we can go over it again, what your order is. When it's time to put things up, you'll have enough help from the club, guarantee. You won't have to hire anybody. Probably buy donuts and coffee, and it'll be all done. So thank you very much, sir. Well done.
Yeah. Thank you very much to all that helped me and sent me emails. I respond to you. It doesn't mean that I didn't read them and appreciate them.
Excellent. Okay, next slide. I don't think Sherry has joined us tonight. Sherry, are you here? Okay. Let me update for Sherry, because she and I spent a lot of time on the phone and sending emails back and forth. And Sherry was looking for, her request was some way to improve her antenna and station grounding. And she also received many emails from folks, and she was also overwhelmed. So I started with the KISS theory to keep it very simple and make sure whatever is done won't be wasted time, because grounding is a very difficult thing that you can do it a lot of different ways, and you never know whether it's right. You never know whether it's the best. So what we kind of leaned on, and we can look for some guidance, definitely, from other members of the club that have suggestions to see if this is the right way to go, to start out with something better than she has right now. Okay, and Lori, if you go to the next slide, I'm sorry, everybody can deal with my artwork here, but the left picture kind of shows what's sitting on my bench in my garage right now. We've got another ground rod, a couple of U-bolts, an aluminum strap, And all of that stuff, Sherry's going to come over and we're going to fabricate this into what it looks like on the right-hand side there. So the ground rod that she has right now is pounded mechanically so far in the ground, it cannot be pulled out. And we really need a little bit of the ground rod above ground to be able to attach the bracket and the polyphaser to. So the short solution here to move ahead of where she is now, maybe not to perfection, but ahead of where she is now, is to put in the other ground rod, and that's what she needs some help with. So if somebody can go over there and take this ground rod and bang it in the ground for her, that would be much appreciated. I can't do that. And then she's going to come over here and we're going to make the aluminum strap with the U-bolts, drill it out for a polyphaser, potentially for more than one, because she has two antennas right now and only using one antenna. So you can see where her existing coax from the antenna will come into the polyphaser. She has a jumper, so the jumper coax will go from the polyphaser to the feed through that she has in her window. The ground wire will go from that ground rod to the feed through that she has in the window. And then everything inside will be much the same as it is. Her rig will connect to that, and also her radio will connect to the inside. So everything will be on the same ground, and she'll have the polyphaser in the middle. And one of the things that I told her, that regardless of whether it's before or after you do this, and until you do this, my suggestion is to disconnect the coax from the outside. And when you do that, you know, John Green would like this if he was at the meeting. When John disconnects his coax, he puts it in a glass bottle. Well, I don't know if that's best practices, but at least it keeps it dry and the glass is an insulator. So this is what we're going to do, at least as a short-term interim solution, because I don't think she's going to get into running ground wire all around her house and massive amounts of mesh wire and stuff like that. But this will at least provide her something to move forward with that is better than it is now, with at least a polyphaser lightning arrestor in between antenna and radio, and especially when she disconnects. So that's the proposed solution for Sherry, and she will also need some more help with this implementation. Okay, Lee, I think, is in the room.
Hey, there's a comment inside the room here. You don't mind?
Okay, love it.
When you connect up the polyphaser and on the connection to the ground rod, be sure to use a water resistant conductive grease, or else that
Yeah, absolutely. Good suggestion. And I've got a tube of that sitting in the garage. It's not on the bench right now, but I do have that. Thanks, Chip.
and let me look and see if I have some copper strapping, so you can use copper.
It's got to be pretty thick. And I'm not sure if you can hear me, Chip, but it can't be just a copper film. It's got to be thick enough to support the weight.
It is. It's what I used.
Okay, excellent.
All right, Bruce,
Excellent.
this is Bob. I have another question also. There's no mention about grounding this to the other ground rod. You say it's buried. Does she not know where it is, or is it?
Yeah, so that's a question that I have for a later time, but we can ask it now because it's a good question. In order to make this work and to make her jumper work, this ground rod would only be about 2 feet from the other ground rod. Now, the theory of ground rods, and Dan, please jump in here, Paul, Wilson, all you guys that know a lot more than I do. I believe the theory of ground rods, to make them work well, is to have them at least separated by the length of the ground rod. And that's impossible here. So the first thought was to disconnect the ground rod. The first question is, would it be of benefit to connect the two ground rods together? Thanks, Bob. Looking for an answer.
And my other question was.
Wait a minute. Was there an answer for that?
Answer anybody? Dan?
I did send her 4 charts, and one of them, these are unfortunately a lot of material about proper grounding is copyrighted material, so we can't post it on things that we're going to post on the internet. But they do point out the importance of any antenna or when you have multiple grounding systems, which this antenna grounding system is separate from the service entrance grounding, you really do need to tie those two separate grounding systems together. Those charts show that. Matter of fact, this has been an issue for many years. In 2003, the National Electrical Code was completely rewritten to try to clarify some of the things about many topics, but one of them, which is called equal potential grounding. You do not want one end of your house be on a ground system from your service entrance and 40 or 50 feet away have another ground system and that not be tied together. The problem is the last two charts I sent her showed the earth is far from being a perfect conductor. If you get a nearby lightning hit, one end of your house could be thousands of volts higher than the other end of the house, just the way the electricity spreads across the ground surface. And that's why the code states if you've got multiple ground systems, they do need to be bonded together.
Okay, so Dan, good answer, but forgive me if you will. The ground rod that she has right now is not her house ground. The ground rod she has right now is a separate ground, separate from anything, that's only about 2 feet from where this ground rod will be. I realize the house ground should be connected. I have absolutely no idea how far away or where her central house ground is. So that's another bit of exploration would need to happen on site. But the question, though, other than that, which I think we need to look at, is it any advantage to connect the other ground rod to this ground rod? The other one could be, another 8-foot ground rod, but only 2 or 3 feet away, if that far.
It wouldn't hurt to tie them together. They're not far enough apart, but every little bit of conductivity you get to the earth helps. I would say it's simple and easy to tie together. Do it.
Okay, yeah, it'd be very easy to do. Okay, and we can check, I'll check with Sherry, see if she knows where her central ground is. I mean, this could be, 100 feet away. I have no idea. I'm not familiar at all with any of the house there.
Paul here. Am I on?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay. To the best of my knowledge, polyphasers are not weather resistant. They can be mounted as a pass-through on the window type thing there, but they can't be put out in the weather. And this is from, let's say 20 years working at a radio shop.
So
they will wick water in.
Okay, I made a note of that. I intended on trying to put that in something. I mean, the polyphasers that I have here are in closed environments. They're in a cable house and in a metal container. But I was hoping we could
put a 5-gallon bucket over the top of that
exactly.
thing and you got it covered.
Exactly. That was my thought. Yeah, it might not be pretty, but it'll be watertight.
All right. And my second question was, is it not possible to dig around the other ground rod? I didn't realize it was an extraneous ground rod. I thought it might be the house, just to expose enough ground wire, ground rod to attach the plate.
So let me answer this the way Paul would. The answer to that is yes, but then you've just dug a hole where you're going to have a puddle. So anything you put on that ground rod is going to be harder to keep out of water because the water is going to collect in that hole that you just dug, which is why I wanted to keep this ground rod probably 4 to 6 inches above ground rather than to bury it. It's easy to connect this rod to the other one, but if we dig around it, then that's going to collect the water and it's going to be always submerged.
Fred has a question.
A couple of ideas. First of all, why is that old ground rod there? What is it for? And is that the house ground or what else is?
No, it was put in by one of her friends to be the ground rod for her station, but he had a ground rod pounder and buried it.
Yeah. Okay. And how long is the rod is the next question. And,
I don't know.
Yeah. And what I use is a railroad jack, a piece of chain around that rod, and a railroad jack will lift it right out. The railroad jack is what you see running around on the back of the forward. That's how they get out of the ditch.
Paul, thanks, Fred. Paul, did you have your hand up? Do you have something else? No? Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody, and I will make sure I bring this back to Sherry, and I appreciate the input. Okay, next slide.
Bruce, I'm sorry to step on Paul here, but his question was, can she find out how long the ground rod is?
Oh, yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, Lee and/or Boyd.
So Boyd and I met up for about 2 hours, went over the emergency procedures, went over that briefly. Then we set in going over the repeater plan and yeah, the net meetings. OpsCon net. We set in for about 30 minutes, listened to that. Afterwards, we tested out the memory channels. I loaded it correctly, but I didn't have the number sequence correct. So I had to go back and redo all the memory channels. Did not put in the digital repeaters. He said to skip that part. And then we had an issue with the rubber ducky antenna. So I ordered a 15-inch antenna, which is better. You know, Boyd put in height as might. So the higher, the better. That's what I did. After that, we toured the house. He took me outside to look at the trees, to look at the different antennas he had put up. And he encouraged me at my next place to look at trees, most importantly, to make sure I have room to put in my antennas. Because where I live, you cannot do that at the moment. It would get me in big trouble. So that was the meeting. Anything else?
That about sums it up. We did spend some time talking about the digital modes and Yaesu System Fusion versus D-Star versus DMR and how they're not compatible with each other. So that's going to be more discussion down the road. We are interested in if anybody knows whether Yaesu System Fusion is used in this area very much. Not much is the answer. At all? Okay. Oh, there you go.
All right, Lee, thank you very much. And Boyd, thank you. One comment.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, one comment. There have been some emails floating around the Groups IO, the OCRA Groups IO, about the Tri-County repeater plan and memories and frequencies. This afternoon, I finished reviewing the latest version that I sent out, comparing it to the Chatham County DMR update and a few repeater names changes. I will be sending that out tomorrow morning. The good news is all of the frequencies and memory channels, if you've already programmed your rigs, the frequencies and memory channels for all of the analog repeaters. So essentially it says everything on the list, with the exception of the DMR repeaters, are exactly the same. There is a couple changes where one was called an OCRA repeater and it should be a DFMA repeater. Won't impact your programming. Also on that list, there were short names. If you choose to, if your rig has the ability to do alphanumeric naming, as well as the frequency on each memory channel, many of the rigs only have the capability of 6 characters. The original list that came out had long, short names, if that's a way to say it. The short names were too long for many of the rigs. And one of the things that we agreed to at our first meeting was this frequency list needs to be backward compatible, because everybody's not going to go out and buy brand new radios just so they can accommodate what we're putting on this particular frequency chart, unless of course you don't have a DMR radio and you want one. So I've got that all updated. Look for it tomorrow morning. It'll be sent out on Groups IO as an email, and I will send it out as an Excel and as a PDF in case you don't have Microsoft Office or you don't have a way to read Excel files and print them. But that will be in everybody's email tomorrow morning. no frequency, no PL tone changes if you've already taken the time to program your rigs, but this is the absolute newest version. So thank you to those that have asked the question. It'll be coming to an inbox near you.
Bruce, if it's Fred, if I can come in now.
Yeah, sure, Fred.
I wanted to clarify on the digital. The Yaesu uses Fusion, ICOM uses D-Star, and if you want the most common around here, it's at DMR, and that's cheap, that's cheap Chinese stuff. You won't find a high quality radio on DMR.
So if somebody was buying a radio today, they would buy one that is DMR compatible? Question mark?
You'd end up building your own hotspot. Probably. Well, no, you need the DMR radio. It would be an HT.
It'd
I
be an
believe,
HT,
in this area.
And you can't use a hotspot with the NCPRN. That has to be directly to the repeater. I think the best is find a radio that's going to work on VHF, UHF, and HF if you can. That's a good start. And I think your choice of the Yaesu is a good one. And I also say the ICOM 7100 is right in there with it. So it's a question then of do you want Fusion or do you want D-Star? And I'm an ICOM guy. What can I say?
Yeah. So this is Ron. One disadvantage for the FT991A that somebody's talking about. Good part is it's tri-band. Bad part is, again, it's using System Fusion, which isn't very useful in this area. But on the other hand, if you're using the analog repeaters and such, I've taken the frequency plan that Chatham County has that you just said is identical to the one that you're putting out, Bruce. And I do have that programmed into my FT991A. So it's any of the repeaters around here. It's just a twist of a knob to go find all the repeaters and get on those. So that's pretty easy. I think Dan has a comment.
I think I saw this in the chat line, but I just do want to reinforce the Connect Systems series of radios sold by a U.S. company. Now, I'm sure they're bought offshore, but they're built to a very high standard. One of the areas you run into problems with lesser radios, if you use them in an environment where there's a lot of RF, the cheaper radios will pick up out-of-band signals, not even close to the frequency you're trying to operate on. But the Connect Systems, particularly the Connect Systems 800, is a very high quality radio for DMR.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Ron. Ron, just one, I think, correction. You said the 991 was a tri-band radio?
Well, I mean, it does UHF, it does VHF, and it does HF.
Okay, because yeah, it's from 160 meters all the way up to 70 centimeters. So tri-band to me, in my mind, translated to maybe 6 meters, 2 meters and 70 centimeters, or 2 meters,
Yes.
220 megs, so yeah, this is an HF, UHF, VHF, all mode, not DMR.
Yep, we've got one more comment from Randy, I think.
And I just had a question for Lee. Are you in an HOA? Are you? I am too. And I don't know if you have trees close out the back. I've got an off-center fed dipole, but I wrote a letter to them just explaining ham radio just being a real service and real needing in the neighborhood, and they allowed me to do that. So might try something like that.
JR.
JR?
Yes. I was gonna say that rig should really be a quad, because usually the Yaesus like that do include 6 meters, and since we have 6 meters in the area, you can get an extra bonus there on that kind of rig. And Yaesu was doing well on that, or adding 6 meters in there. So you have VHF, UHF, the HF, and you would have the 6 meters in there too as well.
Agreed. That radio does cover 6. It's 1.8 to 50 for HF, and then VHF, UHF. So 6 meter all mode is there. Okay, moving on. unless there's any other questions from anybody. Okay, Boyd, all yours.
Next slide, maybe. Okay, programs that we're looking at. March 10th is going to be a business meeting and officers reports, special interest group reports, stuff about the repeater team lead and stuff. In April, I'm going to do a presentation on putting together your own first aid kits. And we'll see just how complicated that can get. Then in May, it's going to be a short session for field day prep, and hopefully we'll get somebody to come in and do a presentation on generator safety. And then June is going to be for field day prep, and then July has another business meeting. And then August, field day results, and we'll see if we need another short program to tack in there. At some point along in here, we can tack in a second round of things to do with the bylaws, as far as ironing out some of the wording on some of the stuff. And then September, October, November, we're needing to get some programs to plan for that. And then December is going to be the Christmas party. And that about sums up what we've got put together for this year so far. So if anybody comes up with any suggestions, feel free to give me a holla.
Can I make a comment about March?
Yes, sir.
So, and this is for Dan. Dan, you and I obviously have not had a chance to meet face to face and talk about the repeater team lead, liability insurance, etc. What I wanted to do and talk to Boyd about pulling in the section on the bylaws. The bylaws that we'll do later in the year will be the, everything and anything that we feel we need to change, whether it be language is unclear, the dues are kind of screwed up, whatever it may be. But we want, I'm assuming between now and then, you and I'll have enough time to make sure we're very clear on what needs to be done from a bylaws perspective to keep everybody out of jail and out of a lawsuit, and be able to explain that to the rest of the club members and take a vote to add something to the bylaws. So that's what that kind of means there, Dan. I see you reaching. Good.
Great. Yeah, we'll continue that conversation and get that to a proposal for a bylaws update. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't want to wait till we did all the bylaws. I want to do an out of timing or out of sequence review and vote for that. So very important. Boyd, thank you very much. And I repeat Boyd's statement. If anybody has anything they believe they would like to present, please wave a flag. It's a lot of you have not spoken in front of the group before, but this show and request thing, you're doing great, and it's something that we all have an interest in knowing what's going on in your world or whatever. So come forward with a suggestion. We can help with the presentation if you need it, whatever you need, come forward. Let's make this another fun year. Okay, next slide. Mr. Ron.
That's scary. All right. Good Lord. Okay. So I'm the new treasurer. And so the first thing yay. Your latest victim. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So we may have to scroll up and down just a little bit, Wilson, because we've zoomed in the screen a bit. Yeah, you should if we well, we've got it adjusted and zoomed in here on our end. So what you'll get each month is a quick summary that tells you what our financial situation is month to month. And it'll look like this. We've got our previous balance was $14,900 or so. We've got 3 accounts. One at Coastal Federal Credit Union has got some CDs. We have a PayPal account, which is where most people pay their dues. And we have a account at Truist Bank, and that's what handles our checking, most of our operating funds. So if you weren't aware of that, now you are. Our income for the month was a grand total of $440. I have a hard time reading that. $340 in dues. We had a $100 donation. Thank you very much for that. And then our expenses, if we scroll down a little bit, Wilson. Our expenses for the month came to $207. So we had a surplus this month of $232.97, giving us a new balance around 15 grand. And the breakdown is in the bottom right-hand corner. I also do a little breakdown there of operating funds. So I subtracted back out everything that's tied up in CDs. It's tied up in our donation was designated just for AV equipment upgrades. So that's not liquid money that we can spend on what we need, whatever may come up. But for that, we've got $44.74 and 63 cents. Just as an FYI, those CDs did earn us about $350 in interest last year. So they are making, we're looking good financially. Next slide. So folks would love to know through the year, month by month, how are we progressing against our targets? Well, for that, you got to have a target, i.e. a budget. So what I'm going to propose here tonight is a budget for the club. And then going forward, I can say, you know, in each month, we've spent so much of our budgeted admin money and so much of this and so on. And we can see here the types of expenses that come up through the year. And the way I prepared this was basically to look at the actuals for 2024. And so admin is basically our safe deposit box and our post office box. I don't know why post office boxes are so expensive, but they're very expensive. We buy a porta potty or rent a porta potty for field day. So that's on there. That's what the field day charge is. We do some insurance. We do repeater repairs, and that's what we spent last year on it. We have our website, and that's the charges that it's a monthly charge that we pay for that. And this Zoom account that we're using is an annual charge that we pay in May. So putting all that together, and then for 2025, just bumped the numbers to round numbers, and a little 9% increase there. I would propose a budget of $14.25 for those types of things. Now, it's just a budget. It's just a plan. Something comes up we need to do, we'll do it. But it helps us understand what we're doing, where we're going, what we're working toward. I thought it was interesting that our annual dues are $20. So for $14.25, if we have at least 71.25 people or 72 people pay their dues, then we will easily cover that. As you saw on the previous slide, there's another $4,000 or so that we have in the bank that we can use for things. And of course, through the year, we will dip into that because not everybody pays their dues in January. They do it through the year. But if at least 72 people stick with us for the year, then we would easily cover that. So I think what I would like to do is make a motion to adopt this plan here as a preliminary budget for the year. That will allow me to start giving you, you won't get this slide anymore, you'll get one that'll show you for February, we're such and such percent for all these different items. Okay, we've got motions all over the place. And a second from Boyd. All in favor? Looks pretty good here, and I see a lot of hands on Zoom. Any opposed? Okay, then I think Lori, if you're good with it, I will. Let's adopt this then and put it in the minutes as our budget, and I will use that as a basis going forward.
Let me,
Can I make a comment, Ron?
Yes, please, comments.
Okay, Lori, if you could go back to the previous slide for a sec.
yeah, and let me make one other comment too. When we get to a vote, if we do again, or if you want to just comment, if there was anybody on Zoom who did not agree, please unmute and say so. Otherwise, I just scrolled through and I didn't see anybody, but I will go back to the prior slide.
Okay. So Ron, I don't believe you were a member yet of the club when we started talking about the dues increase and why we wanted to increase the dues. And maybe some of the people on the call and in the room tonight are going to say, well, gee, we've got $15,000. Why the heck did you recommend a dues increase, Bruce? And the reason for that is really quite simple. It's insurance. Should we have a problem with our repeater that's located on the WUNC tower, it's going to cost us probably between $4,000 and $6,000 or more just to get up there to look at it, because there are OSHA rules and rules for the tower where you have to have 2 licensed and certified tower climbers to do anything. If everybody thinks back to maybe a year and a half ago, Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, the club agreed to purchase another repeater as a warm spare. We did that. Dan and his team took a lot of time and did an excellent job purchasing that repeater, looking for some really good deals on the parts, bought some parts that are no longer out of stock that would have been if we bought the exact same stuff that we had. But that repeater is now up and running and it's being used every day. So it's a warm and actually a hot spare that you get to use. So just because we have extra money does not mean, well, why don't we just forego the dues? We want to make sure we are positioned should we have a catastrophic failure on the repeater and we would be able to actually get it repaired. So Ron, I apologize for not leading with that over when we were talking on the phone and in emails, but I did think of it just now, and I just wanted to bring that up and get it out to all of the current club members and those that were not here when we did the dues change that we voted on the bylaws some time ago. So that's it. Back to the room.
Okay, thank you. Anybody here have any other comments, questions? They all look happy to me.
Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay, it's Randy's turn.
I'm just the net control manager. I'm really nothing. I just noticed on the script that it says if emergency or time valued traffic, please call now. And so I just felt like we needed some training in that area. Go ahead, give us the next slide. We are still needing a traffic person to, training coordinator, somebody that could come up with ideas maybe and just coordinate with me and do training. So it'd be great even for new hams to come up with ideas. But so keep that in mind, another training coordinator. So what we're going to do is just start off. I've appreciated Ron and Fred Bruce's encouragement with this. We're going to start off this week. Ron's actually going to be doing some work with phonetic alphabet, and that'll be a lot of fun. We'll progress to Pro Words and then the ICS 213 forms. I had a bunch of copies I was going to hand out tonight, but I forgot them. Next slide. So if you actually go on the Groups.io site, and on the left side, you'll see files. Just click on that, and you'll see AUXCOM training. Click on that, and there are about 7 files in there. One is the message file, and the Pro Words, and the phonetic alphabet, and some training there. So good to go to even before the Saturday print off, whatever you'd need there. And next slide. And then the format, yeah, scroll up a little bit. There we go. Actually, the radiogram, some of you may be familiar with, the ARRL is simplifying it now to the ICS 213 form, and a couple of you are familiar with that, hopefully. And that's what we're wanting to get practice doing. And we actually will just the basics, phonetic alphabet and the pro words, and scroll up for me. And in the end, we will actually start sending messages and practice sending and receiving and get everybody where they're able to do that. So just real simple, and yeah. So that's the plan. Any questions that I can't answer? Yes, Ron. I think AEN is, yeah.
What was the question?
Who's going to be net control this week? I think that before AEN will be, and then I'll be the 22nd.
Can I make a comment here?
Go ahead.
Okay, so many, it's possible that many of you in the room have passed traffic before. Many of you in the room probably have never passed traffic before. So there are multiple ways to pass traffic, multiple forms to pass traffic on, but certain things are standard, and we need to make sure that we get a good grip on what is standard, what is accepted practices. Specifically, that's why we agreed on this particular building block method. Let's learn the alphabet first. And some of what Ron is going to do will help us do that, because we just can't make up our own letters, our own phonetics. You can, okay, but people that pass traffic as a rule, their ears are trained to hear the correct phonetics. I mean, I know myself, and this has nothing to do with traffic, sort of, kind of, but if you're in a single sideband contest and you can't copy somebody's call if they don't use phonetics, if they come back with some strange phonetics for the letters, most of the time I still can't copy it because my mind is not used to hearing those phonetics. But if a person comes back with the correct phonetics, excuse me, and it doesn't matter if they have a very heavy accent from pick your favorite country, not here, I can usually pull out the letters from those phonetics first time. So it's very important that we really all get a good grasp on the standard phonetics for the letters. And that goes on with the pro words too. A very important thing about passing traffic is to use the correct word. But, and I'm not following that tonight with what I'm doing, use as few words as you possibly can to get your message across. The more words you use, the more possibility you're going to have for an error or confusion. Or if nothing else, it's going to take longer to get your message across. So regardless of what form it may be, is it the radiogram? Is it the 213? Is it the form we haven't seen yet? There are certain standards that we all need to understand and get our arms around, and then we can use any form that lands in front of us and do an extremely good job. So I appreciate Randy coming forward with that request or suggestion to do this, and very much Ron and Fred jumping on to say, well, let's, I'll provide some assistance. We'll get this stuff together and we'll move forward with it. So great job. I really appreciate that.
So join us Saturday morning. Ought to be a lot of fun with Ron. Actually, we've had a lot of new hams joining the KQ4s. So if you see a KQ4 after the net, give them a call and just welcome them and get to know them a little bit. Question in the back.
I participated in this is Chip KF4WBK. I participated in a traffic net in Colorado, and it was a lot of fun. And I had to sometimes just drive around to deliver the messages in Longmont, but it was a lot of fun. Colorado, I don't know if you know, has a statewide repeater network. So you could be in Longmont, which is in the Front Range, and talk to Durango in the mountains.
Actually, there are several nets that meet. I'll stick that on in the little files there, those frequencies. There's one at 6:30 and one at 7:30 at night, and or 7, I forget, but yes.
Thanks, Randy.
W4BOH here. You know, I'm old, so occasionally I feel like throwing out some history. And I was really interested in Eric's quandary of picking out a rig. And I wanted to suggest to them that in the old days, they were frequently made from parts grounds from discarded TV sets. So if you want us to help you find some old TV sets, we could. The second one is, who knows what ARRL stands for? Who doesn't know? Wow, smart crowd. American Radio Relay League. Early ham radio was substantially oriented, not entirely, substantially oriented to traffic handling. And I saw many hundreds of messages passed about how are you and Merry Christmas and Aunt Doris has a cold and all kind of things like that. And ARRL organized that stuff in the probably starting in the 20s. Propagation was not always great, and not all stations were great, and not all equipment was great. So many hops were not very long, and it was common for a message to take 4 or 5 hops to get across the country. And one of their big achievements was a round trip message that I think took an hour and a half. I'm not sure. It's quite a bit longer than if you did it on your cell phone, but it's pretty good when you think about it going through 5 or 10 CW operators. So traffic is a long time thing, and I handled a little bit that was significant, but mostly not. But real good practice, and gave a lot of non-hams a nice look at ham radio because we did that for them.
Thanks, Wilson. I'd like to see a show of hands. Who's a member of ARRL? Thank you. Then you probably got the newsletter, February 8th newsletter, that the Amateur Radio Emergency Preparedness Act has been reintroduced in Congress. Legislation will increase communication options during natural disasters. And that's coming out of U.S. Senators Roger Wicker from Mississippi and Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut and Pfluger from Texas and Courtney from Connecticut. But I would encourage you to write to your legislators and encourage them to support it. This has come up time and time and time again, and it just can't get onto the floor and get passed. But you're living in an HOA, that's an answer. So, and support the ARRL because they're our best lobby group.
Thanks, Brad.
May I make one comment and then move
Absolutely.
on? Okay. This is Ron talking about the training again. So what we've got going on Saturday will be a game. We'll get a chance to congratulate each other on a job well done or chuckle at one another's expense for a moment and then move along. It'll be folks that aren't used to it may have just a little bit of stress, but I think that's not a bad thing. It should be fun. That's the idea, is to turn it into a game. We won't be working, you won't have to worry anything about ICS forms or anything like that. It's just merely Ron's going to read a lot of stuff in phonetic letters and you've got to write it down, and then Net Control will come around and ask you, okay, word number 12, read that back to me phonetically. Did you get it? If you don't, I'll repeat it again and we'll move on to the next person. So it's very simple. We'll use some pro words, so we get used to hearing someone say, I spell, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, whatever. So it should be fun. We will, as Randy said, get more sophisticated with it as it goes along, but we got to start somewhere. So we're going to start someplace where my goal is always something that my mother could understand. So if we do that, I think we'll be good. That's all I had.
And I encourage everybody to please come join the net. Don't panic. You know, we're all going to make mistakes. Don't worry if you make a mistake and miss a pro word and, you know, you didn't spell cat, you spelled something else. Okay. But, you know, come join the net. Let's have some fun. It'll be good for all of us. Thanks, guys. Once again, really appreciate it. Okay. The next, and I believe the final topic, I just wanted to give everybody an idea of some of the stuff that we have in inventory. And by no means is it everything, but, and I have a very embarrassing question here. If you happen to have anything that you believe is an OCRA borrowed item that you have, or that you're storing it because somehow it came into your possession, when you see the list, you'll see what I've got and why I've got it. And it's not even being used, but I do have it. I really want to get this on a list so we can do a better job with our asset management, if you will. So Lori, if you go to the first page, several years ago, we had given to us, I believe, 8 Lenovo ThinkPads. I'm not sure who gave them to us, but they were given to us for field day because we wanted to make sure that we had the same laptops running the same operating system with the same configuration, because that was when we were foolish enough to think that we could network all of the stations together. And we were running 9 Alpha at that time. So there may be one missing, or somebody maybe ran their own, I'm not sure. But right now, I believe Dave has 5, and he's been very busy lately, so he'll get me the information on his. So he has 5 or 6. Wilson is using one tonight. I am using one tonight, and I have one more here on my closet floor. And they're all named, as you can see, 40 meter CW, 15 meter CW, 40 meters and 20 meter Digi. They all have their names to them because they were assigned to stations and configured as such when we did the disastrous attempt at trying to network all the stations together. So there's that. Now you're going to get into several items that when we actually were active in Orange County Aries, pre-Oxcom, when we were active in Orange County Aries at the Orange County EOC, we had a radio room. We had antennas outside. We had a multi-band vertical. We had a multi-band dipole, all kinds of coax and stuff coming in from those antennas. So, and we also had an ICOM 7000. Well, that 7000 I have here, and that is it. That's the serial number. We had a Pactor modem because we were doing digital stuff with the 7000. So the Pactor modem is still here. Lori, next page, please. We have the power supply for those items. And the power supply was connected to a West Mountain rig runner and with a 40 amp input and multiple outputs. So that is here. And then we get into the gray area because I really can't get upstairs in my garage right now to get more information on the rest of this stuff. We have RG213 and LMR 400 coax of various lengths with connectors that I need to itemize, either measure or read the markings on them. Polyphaser, we have at least one polyphaser that was used in this particular installation. We have a multi-band fiberglass vertical, which was installed outside on a pole mast outside of the EOC. We also had a mag mount antenna. I'm not sure where that was, but that's upstairs, 6 meter, 2 meter, and 70 centimeter. I don't have the ability to test it on 70 centimeters other than with a radio, but with my antenna analyzer, 6 looks great. Kind of, sort of. 2 meters is a little bad, but and I'm not able to tune it, so that may no longer be good. But we also have next page. That's why I'm running out of items here. Okay, we have the 80 meter dipole that was at the EOC. I thought we had a multi-band dipole, so maybe I have that in a box up there someplace else. I'm not sure yet. Bandpass filters, and I say need more specifics. Well, I've got all of these here, and we use them every year at field day. We bought, I don't know, $1,200 or $1,400 worth of bandpass filters, And every year they go to field day. I test them here. I run a scan on them, a sweep rather, with my my antenna analyzer and a dummy load to see how they're doing. And off they go to field day, and then I run a sweep when they come back to make sure they're still working, and then they get packed away until next year. We have all of the audio video equipment that I mentioned earlier that we're using. And then the next question, the next item, we have some donated equipment that is either a club asset or it's going to turn into club revenue. Boyd just received 2 beautiful dummy loads from another company that donated them to us because we are a 501c corporation, tax exempt organization, which we need to determine what we're going to do with those. But they are very high power, very expensive dummy loads. Boyd, correct me if I'm wrong, these are like $3,000 or $4,000 brand new, something like that.
Boyd agreed with you. Yes, $3,400 or so.
Great. Okay. And Dave Snyder was just given some equipment that to inventory and sell for the club. And Dave, like I said, Dave's been busy, so he needs to inventory that. We may have other stuff that people have that has been given to the club. And so I'm trying to get a list of everything, and we can determine, what are we going to do with it? Is this something that needs to go to RARS Fest to be sold? Is this something that we might be able to sell internally to one of the other hams in the club? Is this something that we should donate someplace? So that's my task over the next few weeks, is to try to get this this list of equipment inventory completed and make sure we know the status, serial number of everything, the functionality, is it working, is it not working, and the condition and everything. So that's a project that I have taken on, which I should have known, but it's just, the stuff's up in the garage. I never looked at it. Well, I walked by it before I got my knee ripped apart and said, we need to get an inventory of this stuff. So that's what prompted this. Anybody have any questions?
Nothing in the room.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the last page. So that does it for the formal agenda. What do we got here? 8:45. We've got about 15 more minutes. If anybody in the room has a question, a comment, a program to suggest for futures, a program to request potentially for futures, sing out. The floor is open. All I ask is that if somebody has a comment, the microphone gets there so we can get the comment recorded in the meeting minutes. But I am done speaking.
Hallelujah.
Exactly.
I'm going to spare y'all singing out at all. Dave said he had a 5-minute show and tell that he could do. This might be a good time for that.
Yeah, real quick. I don't know if some people might not be aware that your trailer hitch electrical connector has 12 volts on it, even if the ignition is in your vehicle is not turned on. Well, that's a good source of power if you are doing tailgate operations, doing a public service event, or some people do POTA just in the parking lot. If they don't want to carry their gear into the woods, they just pull their truck in there. So it's very easy to make. You can buy the mating connector for your trailer hitch at Walmart or any auto parts store. And I've got paper here with the pin layout for the positive and the negative leads. And I've also used this. I have a 12-volt refrigerator, and I would put the refrigerator in the back of the truck, plug this connector in, and it would power that. And you can use it to recharge a field day battery or something. So that's it. It works good.
How much current can it handle?
They say the trailer hitch connectors for that pin is 8 amps.
Okay, that's QRP then.
Yeah, well, I put power poles on the radio end and the mating connector. Now, we were talking earlier, this is the round one, which is a more heavy-duty trailer connector. I don't know about those 4-pin rectangular ones. I don't know if they have a constant 12 volts or not. They do not. Okay, well, this one does. And like I said, it's on whether the ignition switch, I mean, it's hot whether the ignition switch is turned on or not, which is a nice function. Because if you're operating out of the back of your truck, you might not want to leave your key turned on. So just a quick note, it comes in handy. Thank you.
Aurora has a comment that she'd like to make before Wilson shows us his amplifier.
Just a couple things. Just an announcement, first of all, for anyone who's doing ham pie stuff. Ben and Sherry have very graciously agreed to take over that while I'm finishing up my dissertation for the first half of the year. They are putting together, they have had some really fun ideas in addition to the things I sent out in the email. And so look for a survey of stuff related to that if you're part of the ham pie group sometime within the next month, and we'll get things rolling. Second thing, if you were interested in outreach stuff, I have not forgotten. I have been sending emails out to the people in charge of the NC Science Festival about the possibility of us having a booth there. I have yet to hear back from them, so I will probably call them if I haven't heard by the end of the week, because I think registration is due for that soon. And then third, specifically for Wilson, because he probably can read the chat, if there is a thing on making a radio out of a television, if he's done that before and has pictures, I would love to see a talk about that. And if he hasn't done before, then we have clearly a group challenge that we need to document.
I have done it. The trouble is that the TV sets don't have tubes or very many actually usable components anymore. They're all teeny tiny, and you can't make anything. But we could find something. We can make a radio out of anything. You know, that's what hams are for. I have a book about that. So, can you get down to here, Ron? I didn't build this. It will tax your imagination, but I actually bought this thing. I think when Eric gets his transceiver, he's going to need an amplifier. This is a beautiful example of radio from the 30s, I would say. Pretty typical mid-30s. High quality. I mean, this would be expensive stuff in the 30s. Okay.
There we go.
There's a funny shot.
So this is an amplifier. And for those of you who don't know, it has an input, sometimes called a gazener, and it has an output. You can probably guess what that's called. Ron's he probably has an amateur extra by now. These are tubes. They are triodes. And if you read about Edison and DeForest and people like that, you'll learn about triodes. 3 elements: a filament, a grid, and a plate. So you light up the filament, you put a little signal on the grid, and a big signal comes out the plate. Along with if you have another couple 100 pounds of stuff, that'll happen. So here's a tuning capacitor. Can you see that? See the little plates moving around there? That tunes your coil to resonance, and the output is inductively coupled to this link, and the input is over here. Input inductively coupled from this link to this coil, which feeds the 2 grids. This is called a push-pull amplifier, and someday when we have a blackboard, I can tell you what that is. But probably 800 watts, something like that, if you have a good 3,000 volt power supply, which will but there's no reason to be afraid of the 3,000 volts, because if you touch it, it'll kill you. And you just have to worry about your wife. So underneath, Which way? Here's the capacitor that tunes the input coil. Remember, there was a big one on the output coil. They have to be tuned to resonance, and this is a really neat setup. You see the flexible shaft drive, filament transformer. The filament transformer lights the filaments, sort of like a light bulb, to boil off some electrons, which you can attract up to the grid and modulate and draw to the plate and make your signal bigger. That's all that's worth talking about in there. Sorry. High voltage comes in here. See the big ceramic insulator. The class is determined by the grid bias. Could be either, could be both, could be switchable. Now, in 1935, there were no linears that I can remember. There were some in broadcasting, but not that I know of in ham radio. So these classes we can talk about sometime too, but they're different ones are optimum for CW or for voice. That's it. More than you wanted to know about. Something old.
Something old, but looks brand new underneath it.
Yeah, the top, you may have noticed the top is pretty grimy. This was for sale at a recent swap meet for $250. And I went by and I looked at it a couple of times, and I had actually seen it at the Shelby Hamfest back in the fall. And I started talking to the guy, and he was kind of I don't know if he had a ham license or not, kind of a country guy with some radios and stuff. And I said something like, that's a neat old amplifier, but I got too much. I always say I have too much, and then I buy it. But it's expensive for me. And he said, what's it worth? Well, it's not worth anything. There are 5 people in the world who use this stuff, and I'm 3 of them. So he said, well, what do you want to give for it? And I said, don't want to insult you. And went on from there a little bit. And he said again, what do you want to pay for it? And I said, $50. And he said, well, I'll think about it. So I went around and looked at other junk and was passing his table, and he said, I'll take it. And talking to him a little bit more, and he said, my brother's sick and he's trying to get rid of some stuff. He bought this at Shelby 10 years ago. So it's been in his garage or his basement, gathering grime on top for at least 10 years. And who knows where it was before that. But you can imagine why he was willing to let it go for $50. If he's had it 10 years, it was about time to let it go. Yeah, he's who knows how many Hamfests it's been to. Okay, who's next? Chip. That's right. If you don't kill yourself working on the amplifier, you'll have less trouble with your antenna, with tubes. And we can talk about that if anybody cares. Just there are a few people here who know some stuff, and let us know. Actually, there are quite a few here who know some stuff, different stuff.
Wilson?
So you have to go around and hit them all.
Wilson?
Yeah.
JR here. You probably ought to tell people about how I was trying to experiment in the past with with trying to make one of those high voltage power supplies to drive one of them amps, and how dangerous that was. And you probably still got those, don't you? Some power supplies to run that.
I got your Heathkit amplifier. I don't remember any power supply stuff, but JR did tell me in detail how he was testing this Heathkit amplifier and kind of asking for advice. And I thought it over and said, JR, I'll buy that amplifier from you. I didn't want to have to write his obituary. So I did. And now he has another one that he doesn't have to work on.